Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Best of the Firsts, the podcast that obsesses over notable firsts across all realms of media and pop culture.
And then we pit them against each other to see which one is the best
of the firsts.
So let's go ahead and kick this thing off, shall we? My name is Ray.
And my name is Nick.
And we're really about to do this, aren't we?
Yeah.
But what if we stutter? What if we say a lot?
Then we'll smooth over whatever we can in editing, because this is a do-or-die situation, Ray. Come hell or high water, we're pushing this thing out.
And it's that mentality that makes first episode so special. It's the first chance to really make an impression and stake a claim that this product deserves to exist.
It's not every day you get to argue to be alive, but that's exactly what these first episodes do. And that's exactly what this episode will try to do, and hopefully it'll work, and we'll get some more listeners, and sell t-shirts, and maybe get optioned for a movie someday, Ray. Wouldn't that be lovely?
We've got faces for radio.
Then maybe we'll voice a car.
I want to be a dump truck named Optimus Grime.
And I'll be a septic truck named Bumblebee.
Alright, so before we get started, we have some caveats and ground rules to put out there.
Caveat number 1. Just because we're pitting these episodes against each other and choosing a winner does not mean that we think the other episodes are bad.
On the contrary, sometimes we might actually really like the other episodes, and it may just kill us a little on the inside for not having chosen them. Spoiler alert, this may just be one of those shows.
Caveat number 2. Just because we crown a winner does not mean that episode was particularly great. There are plenty of concepts out there that are just rotten to the core, and choosing the best can sometimes mean it doesn't suck as much as the others.
Hopefully we won't run into that issue too often, but I can already think of a few areas where that could be a problem.
And as far as our ground rules go, we are only allowing ourselves to render judgment on something based on its first. So if it's a TV or movie series, we'll only be looking at the first installment. Or if we're looking at a different actors who have portrayed a certain character, we're only looking at the first time they filled that role.
For our first episode, we decided to focus on the first time we were glued to a television and rank the best first episodes of the original Nicktoons lineup: Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy.
Alright, so Ray, what was the first time that you've ever heard of the Nicktoons or ever seen them?
Back in my early days, of course, watching Nicktoons, there's always the competition between Nicktoons and Cartoon Network, and I found myself in the early days watching Nicktoons.
Well, they were the first.
They were the first. And I honestly remember Rugrats and Doug being like the go-to cartoons for me when it came down to Nicktoons and stuff, and balancing between that and Nick Jr. I think that's what it was, watching the Nick Jr. I don't remember when Nick Jr. came out, but balancing between those cartoons and the Nicktoon stuff. There was, I'm trying to remember what the Camp Shorts, is it what?
No, Salute Your Shorts.
Salute Your Shorts. I remember Salute Your Shorts, and they would play stuff like Legends of the Hidden Temple and everything, and then those cartoons, then Nicktoons would come on. So I remember like balancing between watching that stuff with the live action, then going straight into like the Nicktoons whenever they would come on. Whatever time they used to come on and everything like that.
Yeah, I feel like the first time I've ever even heard of the Nicktoons, I was watching one of the game shows. It was either Double Dare or Wienerville. One of those two.
Yeah.
Like when you had to wienerize and get like turn into the puppet heads and stuff. I think that predated it. And I think I remember sitting on my grandmother's couch with my uncles, who were actually, my uncles are like a year and 2 years younger than me. So it was just like I was the Angelica of the crew. I'd beat the hell out of them if they didn't go for it. But I remember watching that and seeing the Nicktoons and all the stuff pop up. And I got to tell you, going back to them, it was just a pleasure. But a little disappointing, too, because out of the original Nicktoons, I would have thought Rocko's Modern Life was on there. But that is not the case.
Yeah, I think when we talked about it, we thought Rocko's was on there. Because, I mean, when it comes down to era, you just think about whatever cartoons. You're not thinking about when they showed up. But actually doing the research, it's surprising that Rocko wasn't around there.
It was a full 2 years later when Rocko like hopped onto the scene. That little wallaby.
I still feel like they were like all together in one thing. Like that jump between not seeing Rocko's Modern Life and it just is invisible to me. So, but hey, I mean, we have our Rugrats, we have Doug, and we have Ren and Stimpy as the original 3 lineup.
But before we get started, there's one thing I really, really wanted to say, and because I couldn't say it in the context of Rocko's Modern Life, I just have to say it now. Turn the page. Wash your hands. Turn the page. Wash your hands. That was me and my comic book collecting.
Turn the page. Wash your hands.
All right. So let's go ahead and kick this one off. Let's take a look at Doug. This is the first one. Doug bags a nematode. Would you care to maybe sum up a little bit about what this was about?
All right, so it's one of those cartoons that just starts off where new kid coming down into moving with his family, doesn't want to move. We make that apparent in the beginning of the episode, and trying to figure out where he's going with his family, and we get introduced to these weird variety of character as a family. Each person looks different. We're introduced real quick to Doug Funny, and talking into his journal. Now, it's weird because back then I feel like that was the recipe for a lot of shows, a lot of movies, was new kid coming into new town, doesn't want to move, doesn't want to be here.
It's a very standard setup.
Yeah, it's like the go-to setup for all kind of cartoons and shows. I just feel like when we arrived at what Bleatsville? Blufftown. When we arrived at Blufftown and the population, I thought that's how it went. I thought like whenever you got into a new town, it would automatically scan you or something like that.
Like the land had sentient knowledge.
Like they're like, the government's just like, there's this many people now. So that kind of scarred
your
me for
microchip.
A while. Yeah,
kind of kicked in and
exactly
hit that tally mark.
I thought that was a real thing for a while.
So Doug comes in. He's there with his family, his dad, sister, and his little dog Porkchop. And right off the bat, he's introduced to Mr. Dink. He shows him this video about Blufftown and all the stuff you can get, where you can get a burger, where you can do all this stuff, and also that introducing that idea of the nematode.
I really wanted that. Push a button, it turned into TV. You know, until that little box that he pressed. I really thought that was going to be a thing.
It's very expensive.
Very expensive.
Very expensive.
Also, when he's going through talking to the audience, I guess, about everything that's going on, talking to his journal, right? Reading. I guess he would be reading off his journal.
Talking to his journal.
Yeah, pretty much. Getting all the personalities in order. I feel like the Doug Funny personalities, obviously each one is completely different. Doug is just that stereotypical trying to figure out what's going on in his life and everything like that. I kind of got this weird sensation when he met with the neighbor and his wife, and it's just this weird, like, I guess, I don't know if it's because I'm grown up now, watching it now, it's like, I'm trying to think of the words to use, but...
Is it creepy, one of them?
Yeah, like I'm trying not to be negative about it. It's just weird. Hey, come into my house and find out all these things. Like, that would never happen. You're like, where are the adults? Where's my mother and father? Why is this person taking me into this room and showing me all this stuff on the TV and just going around town and, I mean, where is everybody?
Hey, kid, have you ever seen an unmarked VHS tape?
It's like, now that I watch it, like back then, obviously, I just watched it to watch it, but now I feel like watching it now is like, someone had to have like sat down and watched and say, okay, this is how the cartoon's gonna go. This is where it's gonna go from here.
See, I didn't have that problem when I was looking at Mr. Dink. I think Mr. Dink, I feel like he's a decent character, and when you look at Boy Meets World and stuff like that, where they got their next door neighbor, it was a trope. And one of the things that I really liked about this is they figured out what the archetypes needed to be for this show, and they really played to those archetypes. Sometimes they played to it just a little bit more standardly than I was really hoping and anticipating. But I feel like he really filled that role. But the one character that I really loved the most was Mrs. Dink, where she was always rolling her eyes every time he said something, or he would make a stupid joke, and she'd be like, yeah.
Who writes your material, dear?
And it's just, I know people like that. Like, I've got friends whose dads are those really bad jokers. And they got the wife just behind them like, oh, yeah, yeah, someone's laughing at your stuff. And they're just completely oblivious, or they're not oblivious, and they're just loving it. So I felt like that was a really, really strong portion of this. And the neighbor he was a writer, and he was very eccentric to the point where he would throw his money away on these large, elaborate things. Like you said, that one, you press a button and this little tiny compact thing turns into this multimedia experience, just like 3 screens. I may be exaggerating just a little bit, but it was huge. It popped out and it showed him everything he needed to know about Blufftown, including how to find a burger where he went, and he ended up finding some friends. Skeeter ran into Roger, and then went on his nematode experience right there.
How did you feel about Roger? Like the whole like meeting the bully kind of experience.
I felt like the whole ketchup thing where he steps on a ketchup packet. Spoiler alert for something that happened 20, 30 years ago. Then the ketchup shoots up in the air, and it's like almost hitting the ceiling. and it shoots straight down and lands on his suede shoes, which I didn't see any suede on that one. They could have textured that a little better.
A little bit.
Maybe that wasn't in the budget. But the thing with Roger that got me the most was how he stood. Like, he was always, like, standing like he was half squatting on an imaginary bar stool.
Like,
Kind of like,
hey, dork.
yeah, hey, dork. And he's got, like, his knees all out, and he's crouched. And my best comparison that I could find is that episode of South Park with Russell Crowe on there. And he's going around beating people up with Tugger. He's got that little squat to him. And that's what Roger did. He never stood up straight in the entire thing. He was completely crouching down. Looked like he was shitting on an imaginary bar stool.
It's probably an evil thing. Like a bad guy thing.
It's a bad guy trope. You just have to always crouch. You have to look like you're about to pinch something out.
Yeah.
That's why you're angry.
Yeah, right? No wonder you're constipated.
Because you have pants on now, and you just really want to go. But yeah, like overall, like impressions. Oh, we haven't even gotten through the whole summary yet. So he pisses off Roger by getting ketchup on his shoes because he stepped on them. Not stepped on a ketchup packet. That shot it way up and landed on him and got him. He's just like, oh, I know how to get you.
Yeah.
There's this thing called a nematode, and everyone will think you're a hero if you can catch a nematode. So Doug gets really psyched up, and he goes out to this one lake to go ahead and catch a nematode, and it turns out they were just pulling his leg. Nematodes don't exist. But he had to say this really, really catchy, let's say catchy phrase, which actually I still say to this day whenever I have to shout out something weird. It's kaloo-coo. It's like a go-to. I forgot where that came from until I watched this.
When I rewatched it, I remember where Kaloo came from all of a sudden. Like, it just made more sense to me. You know, it's funny when you see, like, Roger and, like, all his bunch of... Like, when they take him back to the dumpster. They take him back to the dumpster and they try telling him all this stuff. And instead of the go-to... I mean, that's the only difference between Roger's little bully tactic, I guess you can say. Like, they normally just go straight to, like, the whole, like, I'm going to beat you up. You better watch where you're going. He's like, no, I'm going to prank you. Mm-hmm. You know, I think it would have been a little stronger if he was like, hey, let everyone come come to the pond. Look what he's doing, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just weird that it was just him and his little gang of friends. Like, his little, well, I wouldn't want to say gang of friends, but, like, his 3 little associates. You know, what the hell? Look what Doug Funny's doing. He's just, like, clicking his arms back and just yelling at the top of his lungs, you know, cool, and he can't get it right. He's like, achoo, and even Pork's was like, oh my god, dude, you can't even do this sound.
Yeah, I like what you said about, like, it was just the 4 of them.
Yeah.
And this was before cell phones, so you couldn't shame anyone remotely.
Yeah,
like, it would just be Roger going back and telling stories about this, and who listens to Roger?
Exactly. You're just a bully. Even if you said something, we're probably not going to believe you, you know? Like, bring the whole crowd. And then they could have saw... I mean, it would have been sweet. I'm trying not to jump the gun here, but... What happens eventually is... They come back to watch him with the nematode, make fun of him. Doug finally realizes that they're pulling his leg. And Porkchop, I guess he made a weird noise. There was like a point where Doug was making a weird noise and it confused Porkchop and he fell in the river. He did the mating call wrong. And he emerges with, like, mud all over him, and they all start making, ha, very funny. And out of the bushes come Porkchop covered in mud. And they're like, it's a nematode. And they all start freaking out. And all of a sudden, it's like, hey, Funny, no, capture it. You know, get rid of it. All of a sudden, of course, we see, like, the whole, hey, he's really a coward. He's not as big as bad. But I would have loved to had everyone there. Like, hey, everyone come over here. And then the nematode, you know, like, I've always been that kind of guy who's like, if the bully gets beat up, I want everyone to see it happen.
Yeah, I don't think that was in the budget.
Yeah, no.
For the animation.
That animation was... It was pretty
primitive. It was pretty primitive. It wasn't what I remembered it being. There was a lot of skip frames, lots of mouths moving before.
Did you notice
stuff came out?
Like, we had like the black sides for certain scenes would just close in and close back out. I don't know.
No, I did not notice that.
Yeah, I was watching on Hulu, and every time there was like some scenes where the black screens it looked like someone was filming it, and I wasn't sure if we were going to cut to his dad but there was actually some black screens coming in, condensing the picture, and then going back and forth. As far as if that's on the original when we watched it, I'm not too sure, but...
you don't know. They were on, like, full screens. We're watching it on, like, wide screens.
Exactly.
I try not to stress too much on aspect ratios because of that. because it may just have been something that went over and it was just never meant for the screen, and then we're seeing it nowadays. And then after the nematode thing, where Roger decides that, hey, I'm going to bag myself a nematode, and he's still squatting because he's a little prick. I'm going to bag myself a nematode and I'll be a bigger hero. So he's there all night going kaloo-cuckoo. Where meanwhile, Doug brings his little nematode pork chop over to the burger place, and his new friend Skeeter is just like over the moon, just like, I can't believe you bagged nematode and other stuff. He's like, no, it's my pork chop. It was like, your nematode's named Pork Chop? And it's like, I can see Roger not getting it. Mm-hmm. But then, like, I feel like the joke went a little bit too far when Skeeter just still wasn't getting it. But still, it's a cartoon, you know? You kind of take what you can with it. And then the whole Patty Mayonnaise thing starts fitting in, where it's just like, this is the girl of my dreams. And then he steps on the ketchup again, trying to go over and talk to her. And the ketchup flies up in the air. But instead of ruining her clothing, it lands on her burger.
That would have been a really impressive party trick.
Yeah. Doug is the most popular kid because of those party tricks.
It's weird because I guess I didn't realize when I was a kid, I didn't realize they were in high school. And watching it now with, like, as you're saying with Skeeter, like, oh no, it's nematode. Wow, I can't. I'm like, you're in high school, man? Like, all of you are in high school? Like, you can't see that this is a...
Listen, you've got to be that stupid to automatically just trust the new kid.
Like, even I was, like, putting my hand on my head like, oh my God, Skeeter.
Yeah. I mean, it was corny. It was an okay show. I feel like you, Ray, especially went into this like really, really high hopes because you remember Doug as being like.
I remember Doug being like one of those things. Doug was one of the ones to catch the tunes and the music and everyone knows all that stuff.
Killer tofu. Hey.
Exactly, but watching the first episode, it got kind of. Like the intro came in and it had everyone knows the intro for Doug, but like listening to like the music over and over and over again, like throughout the whole episode was just kind of like...
Yeah, it was pretty jarring. I actually wrote that down. That was when they first met Mr. Dink and Mr. Dink's trying to talk to him, and then they already have this weird music just playing over it, where they could have just took that out completely and been okay, because then they played the same music when he was opening up his magical box of wonders, as what Ray likes to think of as a pervert box.
Pervert box.
But it just... They had these little licks of music that they felt like they had to fill up the time with, or they only had just a very limited sampling of music, I feel, and they just kept throwing it in there, and there were parts where it did not gel, even though I think this one had one of my favorite theme songs, the acapella. I think that's the strongest thing to it, was that acapella version. That's stuck in everyone's brain. And then they kind of really overstretched it with the wacky music throughout the entire episode. And, occasionally you find something okay, but it just never kind of lived up to that expectation set by the theme song.
So another one of the positives about the show is the insecurities. I mean, that's something that we all go through. And with the show showing that he has those insecurities too, it helps us. And that makes us relate to it, is that we are always scared of doing something because we feel like it's going to go this way, or people are going to laugh at us. And for some shows, they don't really... For this show, it's about the haha, like they were worried like, oh, he didn't bag a nematode, or he thought, he had the thing over his head and he went back to the burger place. And that's something like, it seems like not a big deal to a lot of people who watch, like us now. We're watching it like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Just go back in there and tell them what happened. Yep. But watching it as a kid, you think the same way. Like, I don't want to tell anyone that I failed, or I don't want... So the insecurities is really, I think that's a really good way of catching the viewers, the kids,
Yeah, and I think that was like the central gimmick to this whole thing. This is what made Doug. Like, once they kind of hit their stride later on with this, which, by the way, we can't review it because
it's really hard.
But it's something that, like, we've watched that series forever, and that's the stuff that we caught on to, were those insecurities they had, and we saw two peeps of that. Right here, the first one when he's driving down the street, and then the cars are honking. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go to the burger place and meet some new friends." And all of a sudden, they're just tearing into him in his own mind, being like, "Oh, look at this loser kid!" Like all the cars honking back and forth, like. And they actually played in the whole car honking thing when he was up at the end. I think he was on a scooter, wasn't he? He was on a scooter with the cars honking. They had the kids like honking horns right in his face as like a "get out of here, loser" type of thing, which I thought was really strong. And then the next one, and I can't remember exactly when this happened in it, but I remember the mayor came back and was like, "Oh, look, it's the biggest loser right here." I can't remember if that was right after, like, Roger jumped out of the bushes.
I think so. I think it was right after the restaurant. Like, after he came out and they were, like, trying to show, like, oh, this is what's going to happen because I didn't do this whole nematode thing, that gimmick that he wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And he just came into the memory and was like, what a loser.
Yep. Oh, actually, you know what? There was one in between those two. There was one in between when he first saw Patty. Then he was talking, like,
That's
thinking,
right.
and this was when Roger said, "You'll be a hero."
Yeah.
And then the mayor's all talking, putting on a parade for Doug. And then he's in the car. And I've totally done this too, Ray. I don't know if you did this too. But every small accomplishment, I just imagine women throwing themselves at me for it. Like, I just bagged a nematode. It's like, yeah, I aced that paper.
Yep.
I'm going to get a girlfriend off of this.
I just pulled a holographic Charizard. Yeah, I did. Come here. Come look at this.
I obliterated that Pikachu.
I think that's what's very human about Doug, like the show. I mean, they're all like obviously based off of something to relate to kids, but I think that's what Doug really deals with, those insecurities and those issues going into high school. I think that's what it was meant for.
Yeah,
trying to prepare you for high school. Like, hey, you're gonna have these insecurities, but everything's gonna be okay. So that's a good prep for it, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the other side, like, Doug did have, like, as much as we love those aspects of it. Remember, this is the first episode. It's pretty choppy.
Yeah.
They didn't come in with the greatest budget, so we did have some real choppy animation. Yeah. Like, a lot of the sight gags really fell flat for me. I don't know if you noticed, like, the movers. When the movers were messing up in the beginning, a lot of the stuff they messed up happened off screen. So it's like,
I think it was
they would cut and he'd just be laying on the ground. Yeah.
Like they were moving Pork Chop's doghouse.
Yeah.
And it just cut to them like they were just on the floor and everything was just upside down or whatever.
Yep.
But yeah, the movers were kind of weird, honestly. I was just like, and it was cool that they got in the picture and everything, but everybody here has like that weird color, and I forget that it's not just Skeeter who has like the weird color or the next door neighbor, but everybody has like a color and a shape.
Everyone's a colored person in Doug World.
I think that makes a lot of sense as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and another thing too, it's like one other sight gag when Mr. Dink first met him. Like we get the impression that he's really eccentric, but then he hops over a shrub, like. Yeah. Complete cartoon spring, hops over the shrub. He's like, "Oh, Doug, come on!"
While walking,
and then he shows him those blank VHS tapes. She's so concerned. But yeah, it's the music during the show. The Paint by Numbers first episode, it was very, very standard. What you expect from it. Like, there's no development with Patty Mayonnaise aside from he sees her and decides that he's going to make her his
love interest,
his wife. Yeah, that's the love interest. I'm going to squirt ketchup all over you. And
so dirty.
And I remember when I first hit puberty, and I don't know if this was your case too, the whole like when the ketchup lands on the burger, what does Patty Mayonnaise say there? Oh, Doug, you've got such wonderful aim.
Yeah, you got so much wonderful aim. Yep. I was like,
that became the big one for us when we rewatched that. Me and my uncles, we were like, oh, you've got wonderful aim. That became the dirty joke.
That's when we fell in love with Patty Mayonnaise.
That's when we fell in love with Patty.
I didn't fall in love with her when I was a kid. I got older. I was like, you know what? Patty's kind of hot.
Yeah. She can kind of go with it. I like that. So overall, Doug, like, I think we were talking beforehand. We said that it was a bit of a disappointing experience, but it wasn't a really bad experience.
No. I just, obviously we can't talk about the later stuff.
You know?
But I think you think about the later stuff, but we're just to remind, we are only going by the first, and watching it again was kind of a disappointment. But
you wanted to mark it higher just based off of the beats and everything. But I feel pretty comfortable saying that this will not win the best of the firsts.
Yeah.
Because the next two that we have up are probably the strongest, not only in this lineup, but probably any cartoon
just in
lineup.
Cartoon history.
And Rugrats, the next one we're going to be talking about, Tommy's first birthday. I gotta tell you, like, this one really knocked me over. So Rugrats had a lot to celebrate in this first episode. Not only was it the first episode of this long-running series, but it was Tommy's first birthday. So they went there with the first one. So it's Tommy's first birthday, and we're starting to get this impression that his parents, they're like, Dee Dee at least, his mom's pretty neurotic and everything, and she's wanting to make sure everything is perfect. Stu's more of like the standard dad where he's just like, yeah, just kind of go with it. And, you know, he's an inventor. He wants to make his kid something really, really great and compete against his older brother who comes over later. And then they have like a big birthday party where they bring people over. They have puppet shows. And then while all this stuff is going on where the kids are all being geared up for this giant birthday party, the kids themselves are talking with one another about wanting to eat this dog food because they think it will turn them into a dog. And I just felt like the whole concept of these kids having their own perspective, separate from the parent perspective, and then later on we find the grandparents come in with their perspective too. Like, it just came together in such an organic way that I feel like I could not be replicated really by any other studio.
I think jumping from show to show to show, it was like watching the better way of like putting the perspectives on the different characters, especially from what the episode started from Tommy's point of view and going back into the parents' point of view, and her looking through the baby books and trying to do everything, and then jumping back to Grandpa. It was just really, like you said, really organic. That's the best word that you can use for the situation. And seeing Tommy and like watching the TV and him like being surprised, like, oh my God, this commercial is saying if I touch that stuff, I can run around on all fours and not be trapped in my little baby crib.
I can sleep in the flowers.
Yeah, exactly.
I can lick people's faces.
I can do all this.
I can bite the mailman.
The show is just really good, and I was talking about this earlier, but what really got me rewatching this was the perspective of him sitting in the high chair, and looking up at his parents, and while he's trying to feed him with the rocket spoon, and looking from back to back, just all the first person views was just awesome. And I feel like in Rugrats,
it had that fisheye view.
Yeah, whenever, even like when they had like, they feel like you had like a camera view in the corner of the room, and the room was never just a square; it was like rounded. And like giving you like, okay, this is a big room, and these characters are so little, and that's how you have to feel about the kids, you know, like this is a big world, and this is this is what's going on in their world. This whole room is gigantic. It's not just a regular room. And jumping from like Grandpa fixing for the party, more the guests arrive and everything like that, and just parents are just talking, because that's what happens. You go to a kid's party, and you're just gonna go talk to your friends and everything. You're not worried about what's going on down here. And it just shows like there's another world going on down there, and they're doing their own thing.
Yeah, it is.
So even though you think your kids are to the side, their imaginations are just going crazy.
And it's one of those cartoons too. It's like, if I took the kids out of it, I feel like there would still be a really good show just between the parents.
The adults.
Just the adults in the show. Because they did a really good job and are playing with one another. And there was such an array of different parents. So like I said, you got Dee Dee, who's the mom who just wants to get everything right. This is her first kid.
Yep.
It's a 1-year-old. They've got to make sure they get this stew. He's a typical dad. He's going to want to make sure that like his kid has the best, but he's also pretty loose with it. And then Drew, his older brother, comes over. He's an investment banker. He's a little uptight. But, he's still an okay guy, I guess. He's a big brother type of thing. I'm a big brother, so I know how that feels like. And I kind of like sympathize a little bit with it.
Hey, little brother, I know you're doing your dream, but look at me. I'm the same way. My brother's he's in a rock band, and I'm over here like doing responsible adult stuff. So I feel like I have that relationship with him. I'm like, well, that's cool. You're doing your rock band thing, but I'm here. I'm doing my job. That's just how it is.
Yeah,
little brother, big brother.
It's really cute that you're in your basement inventing hoverboards. Stu.
Yeah, right.
But in the real world, we're selling stocks and bonds. And then we have probably my favorite character out of the adults, which I did not write his name down, but I think his name is Howard. Howard.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's Howard, who's the schlubbiest.
Howie.
Howie. He's just there, man. He showed up with his really active wife who's like large, and she's like always taking over all the conversations.
I was cracking up when he showed up. I was just, because she was like, oh yeah, how you doing? Yeah, tell him how, hey, like, and every time he tried to talk, she'd interrupt him. Yeah, you see, he's great. Like, we got the 2 kids. No, yeah, and everything's great. Everything's perfectly fine. So what's up? Let's get some. And he's just there like, kill me.
Yeah,
kill me. I'm not happy. And I was like, wow, this is. I was just saying earlier, like, wow, this is dark. Like he just seems kind of like it's scary. You always get those parents who are like,
he's the parent that I'm afraid I'm going to become.
Yeah,
That's just why I don't want kids right now.
I feel like also, not to go back a little bit with the whole, like, you can take the kids out the show and watch the parents, because I was paying really close attention to the parents as well rewatching this, but I really feel like they got the recipe for parents are going to have to sit down with their kids and watch shows and like, okay, let's be quiet a little bit, you're rowdy, let's watch. I feel like it was something for them to watch as well. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like when my mom and my uncle would like, okay guys, time to be quiet, let's put Rugrats on, whatever. We're watching the Rugrats and they're watching the adults and they're like, wow, you know what? That's exactly how it is.
Yep.
And I think that's what the good balance is. But poor Howie.
What did you say before we started filming? You said something about like, wow, twins really broke him.
Twins broke him. It's the best way I can. The best way it was described was he looked like someone told him, "Sir, you're having twins," and his face went. And it's been like that since the rest of the 9 months, the birth, the everything, and
yep.
I mean, he feels like he still can't get over the fact that he has twins.
It's like that scene from the Jason Segel Muppets movie where he gets the main character Walter figures out what the bad guy's plan is, then he starts screaming. Then he's screaming the next cut on the bus. Then he's screaming running down the street. Only this is Howie, like a full year later, just screaming in his mind.
Poor guy.
The next year.
Because everyone like looks like oh yeah, we're parents. It's not a big deal, whatever. And the other one's like, oh yeah, we're figuring it out. And he's like, I cannot figure this out.
He's like, listen, I'm about to leave everybody. I've got a suitcase packed, and I'm just waiting for my wife to look the other way just once. And I am out of there. That is a future divorced couple. And did they get divorced in a later one? I can't remember.
I'm not exactly too sure.
Maybe I'm just wanting this to happen so bad.
It's just funny how
they're like all grown up or something.
Rewatching this is like, I never really paid attention to the adults. I felt like it was just talk script. But watching it now, it's like they really put a lot of thought into this, especially like the heart of it. Like we were talking about the relationship between the grandpa and Tommy. Mm-hmm. That's been like, I mean, in this episode, it cuts straight to that where he's like, "Hey, you Sprout, you know what's going on? No, you gotta eat. You can't eat that. You gotta eat this food." And he looks at, he's like, "Oh, I see what you mean."
Gerber baby bubbling little peas fart.
Oh yeah,
that just happens in that bowl.
That just grossed me out from baby food for the rest of my life.
And you just wanted to eat dog food for the rest of
I'm
your
not going to
days.
lie, that dog food looked kind of good.
It did look really good. They put all those little glossy effects on it. I felt like it was a beef stew.
Yeah, they made it really good. Which is funny because that's how they see it. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about Angelica's like introduction as like...
Oh, she was perfect as an older girl. Like I was the oldest out of the crew that I ran with. Uh-huh. And I was a bastard. I kicked people around. I think we were all. I was pretty bossy.
I think we were all the oldest in our little. And just to see and brothers and sisters, yeah.
And just to see how like entitled she was to having everyone just follow her way. And then the first thing that she jumps to is, "I want to bite the mailman." That kind of like terrible two-ness to her that really played true with everything. Yeah, and the other kids were really good in this too. Like I felt like Chucky was the typical nerd kid, and he even had some really good lines toward the later bit. And then Phil and Lil, when they came in, like those twins were just gross.
They're like kids I don't want to be friends with. Like,
I want to be friends with those kids. They'll eat bugs for money.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's true. You put it in that perspective. I feel like they were like Phil and Lil, the kids in school that you always kind of stood away from. Where you're eating your lunch and you're watching how like they eat their lunch. You're like, oh man, no, I'm never gonna be like that. And their characters are just hilarious. They're like, oh yeah, we eat worms all the time, and like pulling things out and just eating them. It's like, and the thing about Phil and Lil is, I feel like because with the characters, you know, you have the Tommy the leader, the scaredy cat, and then the eager ones are just, and it kind of matches their mom. But like they're just really eager to do anything, you know what I mean? Like and try new things. But
again, really good characterization for them because they fit with that family.
It makes like now that I think about it now, it just makes a lot of sense. Of you would think they would act like their parents, but I feel like Phil and Lil is more like their mom, obviously for obvious reasons. They're just like, oh yeah, no problem. You only live life once, you know. Just go out there and do whatever. I'm gonna pick up this worm. I'm gonna eat it, chew it into like bits, and we're gonna share like lollipops or whatever. Pull things out of our diaper. Like here you go.
Yep. And even when they do, spoiler alert, get to the food. Phil just licks his lips. He's like, I really like that.
I really like that.
Everyone else is barfing. Like he's wanting to go back for seconds.
He's like, this is good.
Yeah, so like the whole conceit, again, Dee Dee wants to put on this whole great birthday. And then part of that is that she wants to put on a puppet show for the kids. So she hires these puppeteers to come out. But really, they only drop off the puppet stage. And they only drop off the puppet. So it's down to Drew and Stu being the dad, Drew being his older brother, Angelica's dad, to put it on fairy tale finales, which they have to kind of like get together. And Grandpa even comes in and is like, "Listen, you remember the last time you did that?" I was like, "Oh, my arm healed." Like just brothers beating the tar out of each other, just like they used to in the good old days.
And they
just
put on the show.
I just think it's hilarious how the grandpa's like, you remember what happened last time? Like, why is there a last time?
Yeah.
Why is there a last time? Why does this always happen to us? Puppet shows, like, whatever you do, don't mention puppet shows to these two kids, to these two adults.
Yeah, I have a feeling they beat the crap out of each other over more things than that too. Like if they had a video game console growing up, I guarantee a few more black eyes just off of throwing
Meet me in the
stupid
puppet
stuff
show.
like
We'll fight
curveballs.
this out.
Yeah, and then they put it on, and it goes to hell.
Of course.
They start beating each other up with their puppets, and then Howie, our man Howie, depressed little Howie, who looks like he's 2 minutes away from pulling a gun on everybody.
Looks like a Tim Burton character.
You see him experience the brightest part of his life when these two puppets are beating each other up. And he starts perking up and he's smiling. He's getting into this show while everyone else is trying to talk them down. He's like, yeah. The anger it swells up and comes out of him.
It was kind of... I was like, there's something dark about this man. First he shows up with his kids, his beloved kids. He's a father now, and he's like, no, I don't want any part of this. And the minute he sees some violence, he's like, yeah.
It was probably the first thing he saw that wasn't children's programming in a very long time. Yeah,
might need some psychiatric help.
I think that was his psychiatric help.
That's how it, pretty much. He's like, this is good. I was like, we need to buy puppet shows, and we need to put on puppet shows once a week so that I can get over the fact that I have these twins.
I need to have this in my life. So while all the adults, they're going crazy, trying to figure out what's going on with the puppets, of course the kids are going to get away.
Yeah.
And they're so razor focused on getting themselves some dog chow so they could turn into dogs. But the only problem is Spike ate all the dog food. And the only dog food is way up on top of the shelf. And again, what you're talking about, the perspective shot where everything's wonky. And you can see that up there in that fisheye lens, which is animated so well. And then they get the idea. Chucky pulls out this remote, which we didn't talk about this, but Stu created a hovercraft.
Oh, the hovercraft. We didn't talk about the hovercraft.
We didn't talk about the hovercraft that Stu just created that actually levitates and can fly as high as your ceiling.
You'll never
carry babies.
You'll never make it as an inventor. You need to become a businessman.
You need to sell stocks and bonds, man. What are you doing down there creating hover machines?
Could have been a billionaire.
He's creating it for his kid. So Chucky pulls out this battery pack out of nowhere and just slams him into this remote, and he pulls up this hovercraft that Stu created that didn't work at first because he couldn't find the batteries.
Couldn't find the batteries.
And then the hovercraft comes out, and he goes to go ahead and knock this can off the top of the shelf, and then I think Lil, one of the little terror twins, she's just like, "You're doing it wrong," and she slaps it, and then the antenna on the front breaks. And then Phil, or the other, whichever other one it is, say, "Let me do it." And he grabs the thing and he's starting to do it. And then he knocks down like Angelica and Tommy, and it like gets wrapped into their overalls. And this thing that Stu created in his basement in his spare time is now carrying two full-grown kids. And they're like carrying these kids all over the place. And out of nowhere, like, Angelica gets thrown into this random bag of flour that's just on the floor. Because it's a kid's show, you need to make a mess.
Something has to happen.
But there's a bag of flour in the middle of the floor.
What's the most logical thing we can do?
Hey, I don't know about you, Ray, but I make pizza dough. I roll pizza dough out on my linoleum.
I guess.
That's the best way to do it.
I roll pizza dough.
You know how they stomp grates in Italy? For wine?
We do that in the kitchen here.
When you have to knead the bread, you just put your feet into it. Just gotta wiggle those toes into it.
It could have been a dog bed or something, anything else, but hey.
No, hey, dog beds don't make that much. Actually, you know what? My mom's dog, her dog bed, I was like, fur goes flying everywhere whenever like a kid kicks it. So maybe that's the case. It was just fur going over. But that's assuming that Dee Dee doesn't clean up after anything. But the next part that happens, one of my favorite lines in the whole show was Chucky. He's trying to get Tommy down to safety because his overalls are stuck on this antenna. He's flying all over the place, and he has a flashback to Nam or something. Yeah. And he's just like, "Hold on, I'm going to bring him down over water." He starts talking all these military things. And then Tommy comes down, grabs the hose, and of course, we're still in messy mode. So he's spraying water all over the place, breaking it. Ice is getting kicked out. And then there's a huge mess, and then the parents just find it, and they have to like kind of clean up everything. But by that time, Grandpa, in all his wisdom, steps in after all the dust is settled, sees that can of puppy chow that's there, just opens it and puts it down on a plate in the middle of the floor and says, "Here, Spike, you can have it." Spike didn't eat it.
Nope.
The kids ate it.
Here's Spike, here you go. Instead of thinking, hey, earlier your grandson wanted to eat.
Probably shouldn't put this bowl down, or no, it wasn't a bowl, it was a plate. This plate down in the middle of a circle of hungry children.
But did you think he did that on purpose?
I think he did that on purpose.
because
I think he felt sorry for the peas thing.
Like, I was kind of like, I mean, rewatching it, I was I was thinking, like, Grandpa probably did that on purpose, like putting that down onto a plate.
He did.
He put it on a plate, he didn't put it in a bowl.
He felt sorry about that girl.
I know he felt sorry about that.
You know, Grandpa don't have no teeth. He's been sucking down
when you see it boiling,
sucking down smoothies,
right?
Like weird meat smoothies for the last couple years. I think he wanted to give his grandson an early start.
He secretly eats dog food.
Is it soft enough to gum?
He's like, hey, it's good. It's good. Here you go, Sprout.
Then the kids eat it, and then they start acting like dogs.
Mm-hmm. Which is hilarious.
They start getting down, and Chucky's wooing, and then they're all sitting down. Phil or Lil thinks they have fleas, and they start scratching each other because they're gross.
They're gross.
And they love fleas.
Even as a kid, Phil and Lil always, I was just like, oh, get these kids off this room. Just when they close up on their teeth, the way their teeth, like, they're not fully developed. Yeah. So, like, whenever, like, chewing on something, and them scratching each other, like, oh.
They look like a boxcar hobo.
I always felt like they look like the monsters from All Real Monsters.
Yeah.
If anything.
Yeah, they did. Actually, the art style is pretty close to it. So that kind of ends the episode right there. But there are some big positives to this one. The animation style, as we were talking about, great. And also, there are a lot of lines in a lot of these. Like, the shading on all of it. Like, if you look at Spike when he's walking, you see all the lines in his back and other things like that. Just the shadowing that they've got on these and, like, the sculpting that they've done with it.
Starting the episode and rewatching the intro. Like,
we
all remember the intro. But
Chucky on his vacuum.
Man, just like on like the little parts, like the milk squirting on the robot cat and the dust breaking out. I was watching like, man, this could be like a full, like, you don't see animation like that anymore.
No, it was great.
It's really cool, and just the animation in general for the episode, like going from, because obviously we watched it from Doug to Rugrats, the next one. Watching it from Doug to Rugrats was a gigantic leap.
Yeah, and you knew for a fact that they were probably working with the same budget.
Yeah.
But they did so much more with this one. And it was like there were barely a wonky frame in this. Like every once in a while, maybe there was a stutter when someone was talking or a weird frame cut. And like that could probably go down to like the timing for commercials and stuff like that.
I feel like they did a really good job on showing you that even though they're both the same color, the baby food was really gross, but the dog food was really good. Like, they did a really good job. Even though
I eat with my eyes first.
Yeah, they did a really good job on, like, with the bubbling and the boiling, and then with the shiny. It was really cool. Yeah,
and then also, like, the whole Jewish culture thing that came into it, too. It was very subtle. Like, when the parents came in and they had that klezmer music playing out on the background, you knew Dee Dee was Jewish, and they had the grandparents sitting there bickering back and forth, and it was really, really sweet to see that play out in that dynamic. I appreciated the hell out of it, and I'm Catholic.
I didn't know they were. I mean, we can't talk about later episodes, but the whole Hanukkah episode. That's when I was like, oh yeah, they are Jewish. I mean, it's
and
cool.
It was so
it's real
subtle how it was again organic is the way I would.
I wonder how the decision came to be, but we'll find. That's us to find out later on.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, grounded story, all that stuff. I think the only thing I'll knock it for is that random bag of flour in the middle of the floor, but. It's a cartoon. You need something to make a mess. I think I'll give them a slide for that one. I
think they did a good job, even with the adults and everybody, to be really good about changing the characters up. And everyone's different, but they fit for some reason. I mean, that's what all these shows are about. It's like random characters fitting into this one group.
All right. And with that being said, we're going into the most controversial granddaddy of all gross-out cartoons. We've got Ren and Stimpy.
Coming into this cartoon, I had to hold it all in. I was ready for a certain episode, which I want to talk about real quick. Like, I don't want to talk about it, but I think we both thought Stimpy's invention was
I thought Stimpy's invention was the first one, and I was ready for this one. I was just like, I don't even need to watch this episode. I know this one backwards and forwards.
And it's not. It's not episode 1, and that's the crazy thing about it is that's the first episode I ever saw. So I guess
same here.
I guess might have been under the assumption that was the first episode, but it wasn't. And I was watching this with my girlfriend, like, hold on to your butts, this is gonna be crazy. And I can see why watching this as a kid, it wasn't that, like, it was bad, but it wasn't like insane bad.
It wasn't like you get knowledge as an adult of all the stuff that you shouldn't be doing. So you're like, oh man, my kid really shouldn't be watching this right now.
Exactly. It was just going like the Tom and Jerry routes. But man, when we start,
it's log.
It
starts off with the commercial, the log commercial,
like
which another classic where it's just like log. It's big, it's heavy, it's wood. It's better than bad. It's hopping down the stairs, and that's like the thing when you think about Ren and Stimpy. Other than Stimpy's invention, like the happy joy, it's log, and it's right there.
It's just funny, like how they do like the short, like it definitely throws you off a loop because you watch these cartoons and you're just waiting for this is about a kid and whatever he's going to school, or this is about this person and they're like a superhero, and we have log. Yep. We have these shorts, and it's like doing like this whole like media trying to change like your mind and everything like that. You need this. This is what you need.
And it's weird how consumer culture, because if you even link it back to Doug with Mr. Dink, very expensive. And then Stu is like on a quest to create the greatest thing using all the batteries in the world,
and everything.
The hoverboard.
And then we get to Ren and Stimpy, and it's
just like, we're selling you a log, dude. You're gonna love it. It's better than bad. It's good.
Just log. And then after we do that, then we get to the cartoon, in a sense. And I mean, what did you think about Ren and Stimpy? Like when you first saw them, think back to like. If you can, think back to like your childhood days.
Oh, I remember immediately loving them. See, I grew up on all the Tom and Jerry, Bugs Bunny type of stuff. And when I start watching other things, and this is the main thing that John Kay really railed against, because he was stuck animating all this stuff, was like the Tiny Toon Adventures, which I liked, but they were they were not Bugs Bunny type of stuff. It was a different type of slapstick that they had going on there. And then they had like the He-Man and all these other just really lame like stock animation type of stuff. And then Ren and Stimpy comes out, and there's no symmetry to this whatsoever. And I think one of the biggest things that John Kay did was he told his crew, if I see the same drawing twice, I'm sending you straight out of here. So he never wanted to see the same pose or same gesture at the same time twice. And this, you never saw the same thing more than once over here. There was no stock character. They had one for like, hey, yeah. So, by the way, Ren has a tail, which I don't think he has a tail in later episodes.
No, yeah.
But it's just like, this one he has a tail. Stimpy, he's like this. He has no tail, even though he's a big red cat. On one shot, he might have whiskers. Yeah, like they were still trying to find it.
There was one shot where he had, it looked like they like a prototype, or I guess not a prototype. What do you call it?
I think that might have been it was another commercial. I think that they filmed that one before they did the real one. They were still trying to figure out how to model him, or maybe some guy in Korea just messed up and gave him whiskers by accident. But it was still like really strange to see, like even the backgrounds were just like splatter art and splash and very jazz shag style. And everything was so loopy, very much like in the vein of Jetsons. And also, I don't know if you remember watching these, like or reading these when you're younger, the Golden Books.
The Golden Books.
Yes. Where they would take those Disney characters or like the Hanna-Barbera characters or something, and they have that golden spine on them, and they would have the really shag artwork to it, and it's just like they'd have the outline, and then they would splash like color straight over it. So it looks like the color is completely removed from the outline. But it just came together in such a great style. And that's the style that ran straight through it. No backgrounds. And if there is a background, it's just got some random color just thrown in on it. And it did it, and it killed it. So the first big story we have in here, which I hesitate to call it the first story, because basically both of these halves are the same story. It's Stimpy's Big Day, where he writes a poem to Gritty Kitty. And I can't remember what that poem was. And I'm not going to repeat it here because I can't do it justice. I need everyone to go on and read that Gritty Kitty poem or listen to it, because the way Billy West, the guy who voices it, he does it such a pitch perfect job doing this. And it's just like poetry, the way it comes out. Of course, it's a poem.
It's a poem.
But it is such like comedic poetry that falls out of it. And then Stimpy ends up getting, he wins this big contest. And that causes a rift between him and Ren, where he has to go out to Hollywood and he starts filming these shorts with Muddy Mud Skipper. And then leaving Ren all by himself to hold down the fort, which completely turns into a mess by like the third week that he's gone, because there's like giant roaches sitting on dishes. There's like gruel on the wall, like gruel, like from Oliver Twist, like Dickensian gruel is on the wall. It's like dripping down. And then he's starting to hallucinate. He's like, I want my friend Stimpy back. And he sees a pillow that reminds him of Stimpy, and he runs away, and the pillow's just like, that guy's talking to pillows, kids. And then he turns on a TV, and Stimpy is totally just in his new role in the Muddy Mudskipper show, which is his favorite cartoon show. And one of my favorite gags in the whole thing is he's being chased by Muddy Mudskipper. He looks like Yogi Bear. He's got the tie, and he's just like, hey, dummy, say your part. And he goes, I hate the Mises to pieces. Dang, get me off of this crazy thing. And he starts reciting all of the catchphrases for every single cartoon character. I felt like that was like John K's thing of just like, this is what stupid cartoons are. Like, this is my statement on stupid cartoons. Muddy Mudskipper is the dumbest crap that has ever been aired, and this is what we're saying about it.
Like, watching it and waiting for the other, like thinking Stimpy's Invention was going to be the first episode, and then watching this as the first episode, I realized that was a giant statement with John K. Like, there was,
all the stuff he hated about what he did
everything was
before.
there, yeah. And it goes back to, like the Yogi Bear, the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, like, all that redone, reshoot, and it's just funny to, like, I feel like we were in the perspective of Ren. Like, almost like when you know when he gets on there, he sees him on the cartoon, and rewatching like all that, like how can, like, when we put all these cartoon characters together and like making fun of like all the older stuff, it's almost like these cartoon characters are forced to watch all like the successful, like the stereotypical like cartoons, and they're going to go crazy, and that's what he's trying to show, is that this cartoon is not. This isn't going to be another cartoon. This is going to be... Kids don't need life lessons.
This is going to be crazy.
We need craziness. We grew up with craziness. Why are we trying to do, like, trying to relate to the... let's just make some crazy madness. This is art. We're on pencil on paper. We're going to make people, like, just jump and go crazy, and animation and everything like that.
And then the very last scene of this, when Stimpy comes back...
The last episode.
And he gives up his whole fortune, all $47 million of it. And he says, I came back for you, Ren. I gave up $47 million. And then Ren goes nuts. You gave up $47 million? And starts smacking the piss out of him. But Stimpy doesn't have a reaction like normal people would react.
No, he's happy.
He loves it.
He's happy. He's like, this is what I miss.
This is what I miss, Ren. This is my happy place when you're smacking my nose off my face.
It's just like, when you watch... That's
this
what I'm
guy
saying.
gets off on it big.
Watching Doug into Rugrats and then going from 0 to 100 and watching Ren and Stimpy, it's just like, man, this is some crazy stuff, and the animation is just amazing.
And the animation's like almost flawless. Like, there were some scenes where they did like slow stuff where it's like really frame ratey.
Yeah,
like when they tried to do like the really slow, like gradual movements. I don't think the budget was there for it then, but it got better as it went along. But we can't say that right now,
of course, because
everything else in it, from the phrasing, like how everything was framed when the contestant people come over. And they try and give Stimpy the $47 million thing. He's like, I'm the cat. He's clawing at the guys up on their head. And he's like making his perch. And then he hops in the kitty litter. He's like, I'll show you how much I love kitty litter. And he's throwing it in his mouth. And he's crunching it in his teeth. And his big jaw's like, just grinding that up.
All of those close-up shots, just... And it's gross. It's made to make you feel... I mean, it's kitty litter. You're gonna put it. It's just funny because like you see cartoons put it in their mouth and just like spit it back out. No, they're gonna make you feel like you're in there. You're watching.
You feel like you're grinding that.
You
stuff
feel like you're grinding in your mouth,
and you feel like it's real because there's a weight to his jaw, just like giant teeth ramming that stuff.
And that's what makes you. That's what's crazy is that's what gets you. That's what gets you glued on there. You know, that's what gets you like wow. Okay, what's going on? This is crazy.
And then like. To top it all off, they had really good characters in this too. Not just Ren and Stimpy, but Muddy Mudskipper, who is this like jaded, been through the loops, like cartoon character. Like if you were to talk to some old Hollywood guy who's like chopping a stogie, like, oh yeah, kid, you're a loser, you're a bum. He's always talking crap to Stimpy, and Stimpy loves it.
Yeah,
because you know his relationship with Ren kind of moved him up for that. But then you have Mr. Horse, which is one of my favorite parts in this entire show. Was when he's just like, "You're not an actor, are you?" And it's like, "No, I am a horse." And he looks deadpan at the camera. And then he goes in to go to the bathroom on these two things of kitty litter because he's pimping Gritty Kitty. A is Gritty Kitty. A is our regular brand.
A is regular brand.
A store-bought brand. B is Gritty Kitty. And then Mr. Horse goes in and he plops, and you hear it too, and it's just like the sound effects when he's just going to the bathroom are just priceless. And he comes out and he's holding A, and it's like the smell is just getting to him. He's like, "What do you think of that?" I was like, "Well, no, sir, I don't like it."
I don't like it.
No, sir, I don't like it. Which there shouldn't be a joke in that, but that was such a funny joke.
I think it was just being literal. That was the whole catch right there. And
You knew he was a bad actor.
Yeah,
that was the best thing a bad actor could say. No, sir, I don't like it.
It just reminds me of those like really bad commercials. Like, do you have trouble doing these? Or do you have trouble with your Tupperware? And she's like throwing all the Tupperware trying to catch it. It's like, is this you? You're like, no one does that. You're just overreacting.
Do you make pizza dough on your floor? Because you live in the Pickles residence?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there flour on your floor? Tired of putting flour on your floor?
Yeah, man. But yeah, there was such a variety to this too. They had 2 commercials, which was the first one we talked about, which is the log, and then the other one was a PSA where Stimpy kind of grew whiskers for a little bit. And that was okay. That was all right. But I liked when Ren hopped out of the sugar spoon.
The sugar spoon.
The sugar thing. And he was like yelling at him. Like, that was really good. The asymmetrical designs we already talked about. Sight gags. Like, there was a gag every 3 seconds of this one. Within the first minute of this, first 10 seconds.
First 10 seconds.
Like, Stimpy's eyes are bouncing up and down to the Muddy Mud Skipper show. And then Stimpy says, I don't know, Ren walks up to him and says, "You know, television will rot your brain." Then he pulls open his skull to release this little tiny peanut brain.
Tiny peanut brain.
Then not only does he take this peanut brain up, but he throws it back in like it's a toilet and flushes it using his nose. So if that sounds weird hearing that, you need to see this just to see how
animated.
flawlessly it came in. This is the cartoon for cartoons. This stretches the medium in ways that no other cartoon that I'd seen at that time had done. This is counting all that weird stuff from Bob Clampett, Tex Avery, Chuck Jones. Like, he took that and he ran, and like John Kay created something special. And the thing that I think carried this almost as equally as all the visuals were all the sound effects that went into everything too.
Everything they animated. What was really cool about it is like how you were saying about the toon with the eyes and everything, and that's how rewatching it, I'm just like, the toon and the animation just really went together, you know. And it's hard to do. I feel like, I mean, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty certain it's kind of hard to do, like, to catch it. Sometimes you just want to do something and then you make the music to like go with it.
Yeah.
But I feel like the way they made the music and to make the animation and like how you feel it in your body was literally on the TV screen.
Yeah, and even going beyond that jazzy music, just the regular sound effects, like the plop effects, like anything that happened had a really unique sound to it. And anyway, it's really hard to go into sound effects without saying anything particularly, but the best place that I've seen that really summed it up, if you are listening to this and you're wanting to get a little bit more into animation, there's this great podcast on the How Stuff Works network called Drawn, the Story of Animation. And one of the episodes goes into how sound effects help create the story and add punctuation to all the movements and everything. And having watched this episode right after listening to that, this was the one that best exemplified everything to it. And every sound had a mood to it. Every sound was just equally as disgusting as it should have been. And even like the happy sounds really had like that kind of darker bent to them as well too. So yeah, big recommendation on this first episode right here, Ren and Stimpy. Do you have anything to add to this one, Ray?
I mean, obviously we're talking about the animation and everything like that. It really inspires me to check out more than just a show. Like rewatching this episode actually really got me like wanting to like get back and like really pay attention to like cartoons.
It made me want to draw.
Yeah, and also that like it really made me want to like draw, pay attention, like challenge myself to like, hey, how if you can get this sound and see how you can draw to it, or like just try different things. It's just the technique they used was kind of flawless in my opinion. Like especially for that age, like we were just kids just trying to watch it, and then like other cartoons coming out like didn't kind of hit it, and I feel like that's why that was the hit and miss. You know what I mean? They weren't doing like that kind of attention to detail.
Yeah.
I really love the animation. I really love the sound. Like everything you were just talking about, like the grinding of the kitty litter and the jaws and everything like that, and the tones, the tone shifts. And even though it was like getting dark, it was still like keeping it balanced. You know, like still knowing it's a cartoon. This episode was just, even though it wasn't the one we thought it was still pretty high up.
It was
there.
still really
pretty
good. And actually, as much as I love this, the biggest thing that I can put as a detriment to it, and you kind of got me thinking a little bit differently after you brought up that maybe this is John K's statement on how cartoons were versus how this is like his big like flag in the sand. This is where we're going, and you're going to be with us or just fall off completely.
Yep.
But the relationship between Ren and Stimpy wasn't really established too well in this one. As great as these characters are together, they're not together in this episode. They're separated for a good part of it. Mostly it's just Ren pining to get Stimpy back, and then Stimpy just kind of feeling lonely out in Hollywood and wanting to come back. And the only time we really got a good feeling for their relationship is the end, when Ren is just smacking the hell out of him.
I think maybe that's why we didn't think this was the first episode. Maybe we thought this was like the fourth.
This seemed like it should have been a little bit later.
It should have been a little bit there. And then
I wonder if there was some restructuring as far as like the schedule goes.
Well, with the whole, you saw the whiskers and everything like that. Like maybe this was just like, hey, we don't have this ready. Let's put this on here.
Yep. Maybe this was like a pilot or something.
I know the Stimpy's invention took about like a year to produce or something like that. It took a whole year to get that out there.
And even before that, there was Space Madness too.
Exactly. Oh yeah, Space Mad. But we can't.
We can't talk about that. But go watch them. Go watch them.
As much as we want to, trust us. It's hard for us as well.
So yeah, where everything is standing, we've got these three: the original lineup of Nicktoons, Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy. Where did you rate as the best of the firsts?
Well, originally, I think we both thought we were going to go into this being Ren and Stimpy for a while. And Rugrats kind of had me there. But after, honestly, I think Rugrats, with that beginning, and from beginning to end, just everything was just in awe, and the way the story was, and the way they really brought everything together. Like, for a first episode, it just made sense, Yeah.
Yeah, this is how you do exposition flawlessly. You could, like, start a class just using this one episode.
And they really established Dee Dee, Stu, like, they established everybody pretty well to go on further. Ren and Stimpy, like you said, the separation thing, like, we established that they're crazy. It's a crazy cartoon, and they have, like, all these little bits in there with commercialization and everything like that, which is cool. But to start it off as a series, character development and everything like that, obviously no matter where you put it, even though it's a crazy cartoon, that's what we want to ultimately see. Doug, after rewatching it this last week, it kind of disappointed me, because Doug is kind of a later on show, a little bit.
First episode, I would have to go with Rugrats as well, and I'll even say, like, as far as first episodes go, this, to me, didn't fall into a lot of first episode tropes. I think the only thing that I felt like was really first episode-y was when Drew, Stu's older brother, just makes this offhand comment. I was like, oh, investor bankers don't do this. And I'm like, oh, now we know what he does.
Yeah.
But everyone else, it felt like normal conversations that were happening in a day in the life. Yeah. So it was such like, you just plop them down in this situation. You have all these characters. They've obviously felt these characters out for like years, I feel. I'm not sure if this started off as like a comic strip or something. I want to say this actually started off as a comic strip before it got opted. But if it didn't, then where did this magic come from?
Yeah.
How did you come out of the gate fully realize what these characters would be from this one? Because it just took this show and it ran with it.
Yep.
This just felt like it was masters doing their work all the way through it.
I feel like Ren and Stimpy, we thought probably was going to come up on top because of animation, and sound
and the
effects
cartooniness of everything.
But like seeing Rugrats again, first episode was really, really, really got me in awe. Yeah. Every single bit, where it was like the room perspective and the kids, everything.
I don't know many first episodes that do what they did so flawlessly. Like, they had a lot of like confidence, I feel like.
And what's cool is they kept that going, and we're not supposed to talk about what's good, but also what it made it in this first episode is that they kept that very, very consistent.
Yeah, so. And I love Ren and Stimpy. Ren and Stimpy's my dog.
We really honestly thought Ren and Stimpy was gonna be the one. But...
I had this pegged. I was just like, I don't even need to do this the whole thing. Why are we doing this as our first one? I know who's coming out on top. There's no mystery. Ren and Stimpy has this one, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
But they weren't together like the whole thing, and that chemistry wasn't established right there, which is what needs to be established in that first episode. Now, if this was like John K's big edict on how the cartoons of the time can eat it, and now we're going into a new era, that's genius.
Yeah.
I still wouldn't put it ahead of Rugrats, though. But that is way just inching at the top right there. But by far, Rugrats had it from day one. At the end right here, Our first best of the first is Rugrats. All right, guys, so we've got to go. Just a little word. Ant-Man and the Wasp just came out this weekend. I saw it. Did you get a chance to see it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was great. Now, with Marvel on the mind after Thanos just destroyed everybody, we figured we'd take a look back at what made Marvel special by taking a look at the line of comics that pretty much set the roadmap for all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that came up on this, the Ultimate Comics line. So, coming up, our next episode, we'll be reviewing Ultimate Spider-Man #1, Ultimate X-Men #1, Ultimate Marvel Team-Up #1, and The Ultimates. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Nick.
My name is Ray.
And we will see you next time for the Ultimate Comics Best of the First. So good night and Feliz Navidad.